Sometimes it's not the strangers or the enemies who hurt you most, but your own family. And when they sell you out for a stack of gold, you suddenly realize the world is a whole lot colder than you ever imagined. That was the truth for Sarah May. The night she refused to marry a man so cruel, even the wolves seemed friendlier. They tossed her out with nothing but the clothes on her back. No goodbye, no second chances, just the sound of the doors slamming behind her, and the dark, dangerous road ahead. The wind was sharp, carrying the first bite of winter, and Sarah May could barely feel her feet as she stumbled through the Montana wilderness, every step a reminder of what she'd lost. The sky pressed down, heavy with snow, wolves howling somewhere in the black trees, and every shadow seemed to promise something worse. She kept going because the alternative, going back, was unthinkable. Let me back up a sec. This is how it started. Her father, deep in debt, eyes cold as coins, told her she'd marry Marcus Thornfield or she'd be out on her own. "He'll kill me," she whispered. But nobody cared. Not her mama standing in the doorway with tears streaming down her cheeks. Not her father, counting Thornfield's money. The slap across her face stung less than the realization. To them, she was just cattle to be sold for the right price. So she ran. By the time she saw the glow of a cabin through the pines, she was barely more than a ghost, shivering, dress in tatters. Shoes lost somewhere miles behind. She didn't even know what she was hoping for. A miracle, maybe, or just a warm place to die. She knocked. The man who answered looked like he'd seen his share of trouble. Jacob Hartwell, with a face marked by scars, hands that shook a little as he sized her up, probably wondering if she was trouble or trouble was following her. The fire behind him cast everything in gold and shadows. For a long moment, he just stared. Then he stepped aside. "You're about to freeze to death out there," he said, voice rough from disuse. She took 2 steps in and nearly collapsed. The place was simple, clean, quiet, like the man himself. He tended her feet, gentle despite the size of his hands, and let her eat his stew, silent as the grave, but not unkind. She told him her name, Sarah May Thornton, and watched his eyes narrow. He knew the name, you could tell. He didn't ask for her story right away. Folks like him, they know that the important things come out in their own time. Instead, he just let her sit by the fire, bandaged her feet, let her borrow some warmth and quiet. It was the first time she'd felt safe in days, maybe years. But the world doesn't let you rest for long. That night, as she drifted into sleep, Jacob watched the door, old habits from his lawman days kicking in. He knew trouble would find them. Trouble always does. When morning came, Sarah May woke to coffee and a kind of gentleness she'd almost forgotten existed. But she could see the question in his eyes. What now? Jacob tried to be practical. "Where you gonna go?" he asked. "San Francisco? Denver? With what?" Her silence was answer enough. So he told her a little about himself. Former sheriff, war vet. A man who'd lost everything that mattered because he believed in justice in a place that didn't. When she pressed, he told her about Mary, the woman he'd failed to save, and how he'd tried to punish himself by living alone out in the woods. You could feel the ache in his words, the guilt that never quite faded. Sarah May, for her part, told him about Marcus Thornfield, how powerful he was, how his last 2 wives died in ways folks called tragic accidents. "You know what I mean?" She said she'd rather die free than live under a man like that. Jacob recognized the courage, the desperation. He saw something of Mary in Sarah May's stubborn hope. They made an uneasy peace. She'd stay one more night. In the morning, she'd go, and maybe this time she wouldn't look back. Except, in that small cabin, with 2 people who had every reason to give up on the world. Something like hope crept in, uninvited. Jacob taught her to shoot the next morning, guiding her hands, teaching her not just how to fire a gun, but how to stand her ground. "Respect the weapon," he said, "and never draw it unless you mean to use it." She hit 3 cans out of 6, and you'd have thought she'd won a medal, the way her eyes lit up. For a few hours, they forgot about the world outside, about Marcus Thornfield and the debts that never seemed to get paid. That night, as they ate together, Jacob gave her a small wooden bird he'd carved. Wings spread wide, light as hope itself. "So you'll remember there's still beauty in the world," he said, and Sarah May cried. Just a little. Because sometimes, the smallest kindness can undo all the hurt that came before. Neither of them spoke about goodbye. But the forest outside was too quiet. The wolves had stopped howling, replaced by something even more dangerous. Men with hard eyes and Thornfield's gold in their pockets, creeping through the pines. Jacob's old instincts kicked in before dawn. The silence was wrong, the kind that makes your skin prickle. He woke Sarah May, hand over her mouth, whispering, "We have company." Guns loaded, eyes sharp, hearts pounding. There was no more running, not for her, not for him. And that's where I'll leave you, right at the edge of what happens next. Because sometimes life hands you a second chance, and sometimes it just hands you another fight. Would you have opened your door to a stranger in the night? Would you stand and fight for someone you barely know when the past says you're better off alone? Let me know what you think. Where you draw the line between right and wrong, loyalty and survival. Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget, sometimes the smallest act of kindness is the bravest thing you can do. If you've ever woken up knowing the world is gunning for you, you'll understand what went through Jacob's mind that morning. The forest outside wasn't just silent. It was waiting, holding its breath. The kind of hush that only comes before all hell breaks loose. Sarah May, still clutching the wooden bird he'd carved, blinked awake and saw the look in his eyes. She knew, even before he whispered, "Don't panic, but we need to move." They moved fast. No time for goodbyes to comfort or safety, just quiet urgency. Boots pulled on, coats shrugged over shoulders. Jacob stuffing spare cartridges into his pocket. Sarah May swallowing fear and slipping the cold revolver into the holster he'd adjusted for her. Outside, the dawn barely touched the tops of the pines, but Jacob's eyes saw more in the half-light than most folks could see in broad day. "You trust me?" he asked quietly, one hand on her shoulder as he peered around the side of the cabin. She nodded, not because she wasn't scared, but because she'd run out of other choices. "Stay low. Follow me. And if I say run, you run like the devil's after you." They made it 20 yards into the trees before Jacob froze. There was movement. 3 men. Moving with the cautious purpose of men used to hunting something that can shoot back. Jacob recognized the tall one immediately. Red Billy Carter, ex-deputy, fired for shaking down homesteaders. Now hired muscle for whoever paid the most. The other 2 were strangers, but you could read their intentions in their faces. Get the girl, get paid. Do what you have to. Sarah May's breath clouded the air. Jacob squeezed her hand. "They're not here to talk. Stay close." The first shot split the silence. A warning, not meant to hit. Just to let them know this was no game. "Come on out, Hartwell." Billy's voice rang through the trees. "Nobody wants to get hurt. Give us the girl and walk away." Jacob's jaw clenched. He'd been a lawman too long to fall for that. He whispered, "Get to the creek bed. I'll draw them off." But Sarah May, shaking, said, "No. I'm done running." "Yeah, that happened." She stood, shaky but determined, revolver out, heart in her throat, but eyes clear. Jacob wanted to argue. Maybe would have, if not for the footsteps closing in, leaves crunching. Danger getting close enough to taste. Billy's face appeared through the trees. He saw Sarah May, grinned like a wolf. "Well, look what we have here." That's when the twist hit. From the far side of the clearing, another figure moved, a kid, barely 16, dirty, scared, holding a shotgun way too big for her. It was Emma, Sarah May's little sister. She'd followed, running away the same night, hoping to warn her, maybe hoping for rescue herself. "Emma," Sarah May gasped, the shock enough to drop her guard for half a heartbeat. Emma's voice shook but carried. "I'm not letting you take her, Billy." Nobody expected that. Not Jacob, not the hired guns, not even Sarah May, who reached for her sister just as chaos erupted. Billy lunged, Jacob fired. Emma's shotgun boomed, and the world exploded into shouts, smoke, and running feet. For a few seconds, it was nothing but confusion, bullets whipping past, tree bark flying, Emma screaming. Jacob shouting directions. Sarah May, heart pounding, found herself face to face with one of the thugs. He hesitated, maybe seeing how young she was. Maybe just surprised she had the gun pointed straight at him. "Don't move," she said, voice steady as Jacob's had taught her. He didn't listen. He charged. But Sarah May squeezed the trigger, missed on the first shot, but the second clipped his leg. He howled, hit the ground. She ran, grabbing Emma. Jacob covering them as Billy took a wild shot that missed high. Jacob tackled Billy, years of lawman training coming back in a rush. They crashed to the ground, fists and elbows and curses, until Jacob got the upper hand. "It's over, Billy. You want to leave here alive? You walk away now." Billy spat, face twisted with hate. But he saw the fire in Jacob's eyes and the gun in his hand and decided, just this once, not to die for Marcus Thornfield's money. He scrambled up, dragging his wounded man, and vanished into the trees, promising retribution. The clearing was quiet again, but nobody felt safe. Sarah May hugged Emma tight, both shaking, Jacob's hands trembling as he holstered his revolver. The danger wasn't over. Thornfield would just send more men, with bigger guns, less hesitation. But something had shifted. Sarah May was no longer just a victim. Jacob was no longer just a hermit. And Emma, well, Emma was the wild card nobody saw coming. That night, as they huddled by the fire, Jacob finally spoke what was on all their minds. "We can't run forever. If you want, I'll take you to Billings, put you on a train, get you someplace Thornfield can't reach." Sarah May shook her head. "I'm tired of running. I want to fight for my life, not just survive it." Jacob looked at her, saw the steel there, and nodded. "Then we do it together. We make a stand." Emma, eyes wide but bright, said, "I want to help too." For the first time in a long time, Jacob felt hope, not the fragile kind, but the sort that comes when you realize you're not alone in the fight anymore. As the fire burned low, the three of them sat together, forming a new kind of family out of the wreckage of the old. But outside, far off in the dark, the sound of horses on the road signaled that Thornfield's men would return. The final confrontation was coming. The question wasn't if, but when. So, tell me, what would you do, standing on that line between flight and fight? Would you run? Or would you take a stand when justice and survival collide? Drop your thoughts below. Share your own stories about when you stopped running and started fighting back. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is say, enough. And sometimes, that's the moment your real story begins.